You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory here on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel and podcast feed. I'm John Bauer. Find me on X at the Bauer Club. We got Dan Lamagna at FF Coach. Dan, look at that bling. Wow. What's up?
Hey, man, I said I'd have the Justin Jefferson bling today. I think I got the Walmart receipt for this. So if something happens during the show and it breaks, I'm covered, guys.
I was going to say, I bet you it cost the same amount as Justin Jefferson's chain, too.
It's close. It's up there.
Close. Mitch, what's going on? That's at Dino MC on X.
Another NFL Sunday, another Lions win, another win for the best team in the NFL. We're keeping it going. We're going to the Super Bowl this year. And you guys are going to have to deal with this for like forever, probably. Really. Yeah. There's no holding me back now.
Understandable. You guys have been through a lot. Speaking of fandom, I wasn't even sure if I was going to keep the Pitt helmet up here, but I even wore my Pitt long sleeve tee tonight after that ass whooping against SMU. We had family over. We were like, oh, huge game. Oh my, everybody left at halftime. I was like, all right, well, at least I can get to sleep early. Anyway, week 9 is in the books, folks. It is in the books. We have plenty to talk about. We're trying to keep this show to 45 minutes tonight. I can tell you right now that's not going to happen. So clear your schedule for the next hour. One of the main topics we want to talk about tonight, it's kind of a second half of the season dynasty sells type episode, but it's looking at it from the perspective of a contender. But there's going to be a lot of takeaways here. So if you're listening and you're like, I don't have that many teams, I'm not contenders, there's probably not going to be much of a discussion here for me. The conversations are still going to be very relevant. So stay plugged in here, and there's going to be some takeaways for everybody, not just those contenders, but I think there's going to be some nuggets here for rebuilding teams too, or teams that are just looking to make a push. So we're looking to make a push as a contender. Dan, overall, I think it's fair to say we have different buckets of players. If you're a contender, the types of players you're looking to move, and you could look at it from a roster construction standpoint where, okay, maybe you're flush with running backs, but you need a wide receiver. So you find another contender that might be interested in that, or you have injured players that you're looking to move off of your roster for producers. So you look at teams that are rebuilding to go that route, or you kind of have these young, desirable assets that you might be looking to move because they have a market. Everybody's going to want them, but they're not necessarily producing.
I think I try every which way under the sun, JB, to make a trade happen. Everything that you just literally covered, it's very easy to try to maybe start with the bottom 5-6 teams, throw some trades out there, figuring at least a couple of them, if not all of them, could be either thinking about rebuilding or in rebuilding mode. But then also just staying active in the chat. Sometimes some other teams surprise you that you don't expect to be in it. And the barometer for me, outside of, you definitely mentioned hit on positions, hey, you're strong at receiver, you want to get a running back or vice versa. Outside of that, my barometer is who am I not going to miss next year? If I'm not going to miss him next year, I'm ready to move. So any which way I could potentially make a trade to improve a roster, I'm going to try to do.
Mitch, on last week's episode, we talked about kind of what it was easier to do. And you mentioned if you have pieces as a team that's not contending, you have found it easier to go that way and move those pieces to contenders. And I said, hey, I actually think it's a little bit easier the other way. So now on this week's episode, kind of putting us to the test, kind of making you go that more difficult route and move some pieces that a rebuilding team might want in order to help you along your way here in 2024.
Yeah, it's anyone who's played Dynasty for more than a year kind of knows, hey, if you're a contender, you want to move these injured players off your team because you're not giving up anything this year. You're giving up a player. Hopefully you're getting an immediate starter back and you're not losing anything off your starting roster. So you're still a contender moving in. A lot of the guys that we're going to hit on this episode are guys that I like. I like these players, but that's the point is rebuilders are also going to like these players. And so I think attacking it from this aspect, we could come on the show every single week, be like, hey, this guy get injured, trade him for this. This guy got injured, trade him for this. What if I have a few teams to where I'm having a hard time moving off Rice, moving off Ayuk for the price that I'm okay with. So what's another asset I'm willing to move? And I think being willing to move these higher tiered guys that we might not be fully in love with, we're okay with them on our teams, but we're willing to move them off. I think it's a good way to attack it.
Yeah, and there's going to be a market, like I said, and it's, having a market available within your league. That's what creates the trade opportunities, obviously. And the longer we go here, especially if you don't have a trade deadline, but the more and more teams that realize, okay, maybe I'm not in contention, that opens up more opportunities and more paths for you to find a successful trade partner. Right now, when I go through my leagues and I see there's a league where you have like 8 teams that are 3-5, 4-4, 5-3, kind of all muddied together there. Like, that's really difficult to get a move done where everybody sees themselves as a contender, or they're not ready to throw in the towel quite yet. So I think even though you tried something last week, re-explore it this week. It might not be with the same team, but kind of the same structure. And if you looked at those 3 teams that are at the bottom of your standings, you couldn't get anything done, maybe something opened up. So the teams that I'm necessarily, that I'm looking to attack here are teams that I didn't think were ready to blow it up quite yet last week. But I look at the schedule, they lost this week. And like Dan said, just paying attention to the chat, just paying attention to the trade baits, trying to be the first to market, because even if they don't accept your deal, the trade that you offer, at least you're kind of setting that market and the expectation. There's nothing worse, guys, right, than you see a trade go through where a contender picks up an asset and you're like, oh my goodness, I would have paid more.
Dude, my favorite thing in chats now is when someone comes out, there's a trade and they're like, oh, wish I would have known that player was available for that cheap. Send an offer and then you'll find out. Like, it's a two-way street. A lot of times deals get done between 2 managers because they both know they could work very easy together. They could send a trade, it gets done. If you're the guy that's really hard to trade with every single time and someone's looking, hey, I have an injured player, I'm looking to get out of him, more than likely you're not going to be the first guy that gets an offer. And so then if you're not the one out there also attacking on the other end, you're going to miss out on deals.
I have managers that I won't send a trade to.
Oh,
because
100%.
I know it's gonna be a waste of time.
Yep.
Either it sits there. We've talked about this so many times. Either it sits there, or I know it's going to be a quick rejection or a counter that is just like, how is this beneficial to anybody? Well, clearly it's beneficial to you, but why would I be interested in anything remotely close to that?
Hey, which is good for our listeners is that we get, we're in the heart of the season now, but as you get to the off season, you're shopping leagues. I think one of the things we've strategically done is really find the active owners in our Discord, getting leagues together with them. And more often than not, the majority of the league is very active.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're watching this episode, drop a like, hit that like button. Make sure you come check out the additional content over at ddfantasyfootball.com. The $15 tier down to $7.50 for the first month. Use code Theory. Get in the Discord. In addition to all of the great content that's on the YouTube channel, the podcast feed, there are 8 bonus episodes every week within the DD Fantasy Football Discord. So the community is going nonstop. And that's in addition to the Trinity Tracker, the War Machine, all the good stuff there on the DD Fantasy Football website. So again, Code Theory, come check it out. All right. We talked about the injured players a little bit. Let's get into some of the guys that maybe we would be looking to move because they have some appeal for rebuilders. Mitch, Dalton Kincaid.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's, to start this off, let me say all the guys that I'm mentioning, I like having them. I like going into the season with these guys. But if I'm contending, Dalton Kincaid isn't giving me anything over Tucker Kraft, right? I mean, Tucker Kraft's given me more than what Dalton Kincaid has. And we had all the hope in the world for him. And the hardest thing that I have with Kincaid right now is his target competition. It's competition, but it's not like what other tight ends have to go against, right? I mean, I love Keon Coleman, but it's Keon Coleman. I love Khalil Shakir. It's Shakir, right? And I mean, you would think that Kincaid could not, I mean, he is getting targeted a little bit more, but none of them are converting into big games. And so for me, I do think there is still always that hope in tight end premium leagues toward these young guys in the league. And people are willing to acquire them on a younger team because they're like, look, we have a trade coming up with George Kittle, right? I'm a rebuilder. I have Kittle. There's Kincaid on the market. As contender, I want Kittle. And so I'm okay making a move for that. It's not going to be straight up. There's going to be other things added. But the biggest issue with Kincaid is he's just not giving you anything. He hasn't topped 55 yards once this season. He's had over 5 receptions once. He's had 5 receptions once. It's nothing. So we talk about tight end premium. Oh, you can't get rid of these young tight ends. Dude, if he's giving you 4 catches a game, the tight end premium doesn't matter. It could be 3 points. He's giving you nothing more than what any other tight end isn't giving you each week. I mean, right now, Mike Gesicki is a flat out better play than Dalton Kincaid.
Especially if T. Higgins is out. And like Mitch said, we're not saying like there's you'll see as we go through this list. Mm-hmm. It's not sell these guys just to sell them.
And they're good players. These are good players.
And this is why, like, it's not, if you're contending and you're looking to make a trade, try to trade,
Jaden Daniels.
No.
Where are you going with this, JB? Where are you going here? Are you on the tight end?
Go trade Rashad Bateman, get a player that's producing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants Rashad Bateman, especially right now. It took me a while. Like, it took me a second there, but I got there, guys. Don't worry. Dan's like, where are you going with this, JB?
Kincaid's a painful one for me because I think I spent this entire offseason on all of my rosters trying to land on everyone, either A, Brock Bowers, B, Dalton Kincaid. If I couldn't get either, I tried to settle for Ferguson for my boys. And like, ironically, Mitch, like if you talk to your brother, we're in one league together, and I must have offered him 568 offers for Dalton Kincaid. First round picks, everything. He shot me down 565 times. And if he goes and looks back, like, to you putting him on our show notes tonight, he's got to be thinking, man, I probably should have hopped at least one of those offers, I guarantee you. So
but
this is still tough, though.
My point was to tie into what Mitch said, like the players we're talking about tonight, there's going to be a market.
Yes.
It's not going to be players where we're trying to send you out with homework saying, go trade these players. Go trade Ben Sinnott and get a piece that's going to help you contend. What piece are you getting realistically that's going to help you contend right now? And then I'm sure as we go through this episode, we're going to talk about timing and kind of roster construction a little bit too. But let's get through some Dalton Kincaid trades. And we'll go, I always like to start with the other person that didn't bring the player to the table. So Dan, let's start with you. Dalton Kincaid and Chris Olave for Ladd McConkey and Tucker Kraft. 12-team Superflex, start 8, half PPR, extra half points for tight ends.
This is kind of a hard one. And like, I thought long and hard about these tonight. And I did put in my show notes, hey, I am not selling Dalton Kincaid unless it's an overpay. But I'm like, in the back of my, like, I have the little devil over here that's called Mitch. And he's saying, I'm going to hear his voice for probably the next, rest of the season to see whether this pans out or not. Because he's got a good point of what Kincaid has actually been producing versus what I'm hoping for. I still do like Kincaid, even though he's not done what I'd hope. And I definitely have concerns the way that Buffalo offense is running. But I'm still going to bet on talent, JB. And in this case, even though after Olave and my 95% DraftKings shares went to where last week. He is going to get healthy again, and I'm going to go with Kincaid and Olave. But I could definitely understand the owner who sees the producing craft and on the upswing of McConkey there. No arguments if you took that side, but I will stay with Kincaid and Olave.
Mitch, is this enough to make you move off of Kincaid?
If this was a start 10, I would think about it a lot more to go with Latin Craft. But start 8, I'm probably not starting Olave in the first place. I'm hopefully not. Kincaid is probably a starter in a 12 team, but in a start 8, I mean, it's fine, but I don't see either of these 4 guys really eclipsing my starting roster. So if I'm moving off of Kincaid, I want something better than like a Latin, a Craft, right? But say this is a start 11, and then all of a sudden I'm looking, hey, these flex spots, how I'm attacking this. Olave with his concussion history, who knows how that's going to happen. That's going to open me a lot more up to Latin Craft.
In these league settings, we align perfectly here, Mitch. I would much rather, I'm fine with moving Kincaid, and I tried to pull trades here, and you'll see it more with these other trades where we're getting pieces that might be producing a little bit more. And this one, it was interesting, and I probably could have left it off, to be honest with you, because it's not like Kraft is a world beater right now. It's not like Ladd outside of the one game is just destroying things. And he's a young enough asset that's going to be hard to take off of a rebuilding team. But in a start 8, 12-team league, I would be looking to package up Kincaid and Olave just for one asset.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you were getting at. But I thought it was an interesting trade. But again, you'll see as we get through more of these, we're really going to see the divide between moving a piece that a rebuilding team will want for a veteran presence. Dan, Kincaid for Evan Ingram in a 25 third, 12-team Superflex, start 11 PPR, extra half point for tight ends.
It's easy, Kincaid for me. I know there's some weeks where Evan Ingram and he's a receiver playing tight end, and I like him. A third just isn't enough. I'm staying bullish on my rankings where I have a Kincaid, and I'm going to stick with him.
I agree. I think you could get a little bit more on this, but this is the kind of trade here in 3 weeks you're going to be looking at doing. If you're a serious contender going into the playoffs and you need another piece, and Kincaid is giving you these 6-7 point weeks where Ingram can give you that league winning week, and I don't think Kincaid can do it. Right now, no, I'm taking Kincaid. If you ask me this December 1st and I'm making a good playoff push, this is a good trade that I'm willing to make. I'm really hoping that we get in the comments this week of hey, you guys are stupid. You don't trade off these guys, right? Because that's what we want. Well, I don't want to be out here and everyone's like, oh yeah, this guy sucks. You trade him off your team. People should want Kincaid, and that's what you want. You want there to be a robust market. So hopefully right now you're not doing the Kincaid for Ingram in a third.
And go ahead, Dan.
So I also concerned too, I consider Ingram a receiver playing tight end, and he's 30 years old. So I worry about those wheels falling off at some point where Kincaid, year 2, I know he's a little bit of an older prospect coming out. He's 25, but he's still entering his prime, and he's tight to Josh Allen.
This one still wasn't enough for me as well. I would stick with Kincaid. That Jacksonville offense, it's kind of, ebbs and flows. Sometimes you have some flashes, but oftentimes we see things that, we would like some improvement. But Mitch, I want to hit on something really quick that you mentioned. Maybe this is something you explore in 3 or 4 weeks. I think the timing for a lot of these trades is important, and your roster construction. So whereas, we started the episode saying maybe you move a wide receiver for a running back because you're flush at one position or vice versa, and your market opens up because now you can look at contending teams too. But if you have a team where a manager puts somebody on the block, but you have 15 weekly starters that you could throw into your lineup, it's really tough to, excuse me, to want to unload a young asset for a producing asset when you're already a team that has depth. Because now, are you really upgrading your starting lineup? Probably not. Are you making your start-sit decisions more difficult? Yeah. So oftentimes, we'll get trade questions and we'll get I'll respond. I'm like, the value on that is perfectly fine, but do you need to make that trade? And if the answer is no, because like, what goal are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to compete. I'm trying to win the league. You might not need to make the trade just because you have other assets that you could plug in there and not have to move off these younger assets. Like I have some teams, they need their AARP card. Like they're old teams. And I'm like, this could get challenging in maybe 2 years or so. So hopefully we run strong here, but that's the kind of position you put yourself in when you're just, let's get the veteran. Yeah. The price is fine, but I don't think you necessarily need to do it because of the way your roster is built. All right, Dan, Kincaid in a 25 first for George Kittle and Terry McLaurin, 12-team Superflex, start 11, PPR, extra 0.5 for tight ends.
Boy, you're dangling the carrot out with this trade. And if you're a contender and you're starting 11 and, you don't want to start Jake Bobo next week or whoever you have with the bye weeks, depending on your depth. If you don't have depth, I could understand you going for Kittle McLaren saying, hey, I want to win this year, pay for my dynasty team. So from that perspective, if you really need it and you're looking to win the jackpot this year, I could live with going with Kittle and McLaurin, but I'm very reluctant to give up a young Kincaid in a first because this could become a trade I'm really not crazy about next year. But I mean, if Jaden Daniels did untap McLaurin and he's going to be their number one for a couple years, I think you're safe for a little while. So me personally, I like Kincaid in the first, but I think it makes sense here. I would pick Kittle and McLaurin.
Mitch, is this enough for you to move off of Kincaid in the
100%? Well, we talked about it on the Start Sit show. McLaurin is an every week starter. He is not leaving my lineup. He's a top 10 wide receiver for me every single week. And Kittle's been amazing so far, especially with Ayuk out of the lineup for the rest of the season. Kittle is going to keep producing. This is a trade that I could easily see myself doing because I'm considering that 25 first, the 111, 112. Yeah, it'll be worth more in May, but it's not worth more than me getting money this year.
And this is the package deal that I would be interested in as a contender, because I do have a lot of teams that have a Diggs, that have an Ayuk still, that, like Mitch said, I haven't been able to move them. Maybe I have an Olave or a Waddle, and they're not producing. So you went from having a strong wide receiver room to now trying to pick up some pieces here. And now you're getting one of the true difference-making tight ends that are out there right now in full PPR. He's averaging like 18 and a half PPR points per game or something like that. And now you're adding the additional half points for the tight end premium. I will take Kittle and McLaurin with the idea and the premise here that we're a contending team moving Kincaid. All right, last one. Kincaid for David Njoku. PPR with an extra half points for tight ends.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my rankings again. Give me Kincaid. Tight to Josh Allen.
My issue is with how bad Jameis looked this past week, and we all knew that was going to happen. We just didn't think it would happen the second game that he was coming back, that like the wheels would just fall off. Like, I'm afraid that they're going to go to DTR at some point. And if they do that, then I don't want anyone on this offense pretty much. I want Chubb and nobody else. So you asked me this last week. I could talk myself in Njoku because I do think he's a better weekly producer than what Kincaid's going to be. But who knows if that coaching staff's going to be here by the end of the season? Just who knows what's going on with that team.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's amazing how Jameson could just untap everybody fantasy wise, but just can't get out of his own way to stop throwing interceptions. 3 of them last week, which is just a killer. And, no matter where they land this year, Mitch, there's so much uncertainty about next year. Mm-hmm. Again, Kincaid is just safe.
And, we said it was a tough matchup on the Start Sit show, but like some of those interceptions, it wasn't because of the matchup. Like there wasn't a receiver around.
Yeah.
Like Dan might have been the closest receiver, if that's possible. All right, Dan, you threw a name at me, and like so many people are just so frustrated. Jalen Waddle. He gives you the name value. He's tied to Tua for now, who's obviously a hyper accurate quarterback. but something's not clicking. He's not giving us the production we want out of a wide receiver that we're paying that price to keep on our team.
Yeah, this is one I put on the list because there's still some attraction with Waddle. There's still some potential. There's still some youth. You know, I think you could potentially move him. But for me, he's also the guy I want to move for a lot of reasons. One, I think he's made out of glass. Two, there's a lot of uncertainty in Miami. Like we see this often. Like last year, that Miami offense was humming, but the good coaching staffs find a way to keep it humming. They make some adjustments. They make some tweaks. I'm not confident it's a good coaching staff in Miami, and I could see that head coach being on the hot seat at some point in the future. And then you have Tua's health, which is another just concern. So I think made of glass, Tua's health, the coaching question marks. There's just if too many ifs for me, which makes him a kind of guy that I want to move off of.
All right, Mitch, we're going to start with you here.
Okay.
Jalen Waddle in a 26th third for Najee Harris and Chase Brown, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Waddle guy in the world anymore at this point. I don't think there's a lot of people who are, so I'm going Najee and Chase Brown. Chase Brown looked amazing last week.
Hey, he was getting the volume, and now Zach Moss has the neck injury. He's out indefinitely, at least for the time being. And, this is – I would be shocked if you couldn't get something done like this in most situations. Again, a team that is ready to throw it in, and they're like, hey, I'm looking to move my running backs. Jalen Waddle was a heck of a lot more attractive for a team like that than Najee Harris and Chase Brown. Dan, where are you here?
With Mitch, man, it's a smash, Najee and Chase Brown, and what a difference. Hey, we look from the offseason where Najee was kind of looking lackluster and there's a lot of question marks. Chase Brown, we were hoping, there was optimism there, but he was still behind Zach Moss. They're both running the best they've ran in their entire career, both of these guys, and I think have some upside for next year as well. So I think they'll help you win this year and next year. Whoever got this trade here, I think did really well.
How many PPR points is Jalen Waddle averaging right now, guys? Just guess.
8.7.
Dan?
Is this like the Price is Right? Maybe $1? I don't know. 7. I think you got to put an asterisk there because there were a lot of weeks without Tua. So I'd be curious with it versus without Tua. I saw him a little bit more active this week. I also saw him limping off the field, but then I saw him come back in. So I'm interested to hear what you say, JB, but I would put it with an asterisk based on there was some very bad backup quarterback play in Miami for a while.
True. No, there was. Price is Right style. If you said $1, you would have won because it's 8.3. So Mitch was right there.
Pretty good.
But $1 would have taken that home. He per game he's wide receiver 65. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, Mitch. Jalen Waddle in a 25 first and a 26 second are Sam Laporta and Jacoby Myers. 10 teams start 10 PPR, and then just an extra 0.25 for tight ends.
Yeah, the 10 teams start 12 for me. It's the same as this 12 teams start 10, but I'm going Laporta and Jacoby here. I think Laporta is just the better prospect. I'm not in love with Jacoby, but if I'm seeing that as a late first, I'm going to take Laporta and go from there.
Yeah, but it's the same amount of starters, but 12 teams start 10. A late first could be the 12th pick overall.
Oh, no, you're right.
You're locked in to a top 10 pick here for Sam Laporta, who's been doing less than Jalen Waddle.
I know. That's probably the Lions fan in me, and I'm willing to be biased about that.
And I love Jacoby Myers, but the Waddle side here, it's appealing to me. Like, I would love to do this trade, but not include Laporta. Like, can I get something that's actually producing?
That's not the question. We're not allowed to switch people out, John. We got to answer the question as you present them.
I think I would stick with the Waddle side here.
Oh, man. I can't, JB. I'm with Mitch, and I'm not a Lions fan. And although I'm tired, it was cool for Mitch, and I was definitely happy for him, JB, for about like 6-7 weeks, maybe 8. But now in week 9, I think we're in for a long season listening about Detroit. But I think when we look at Laporta, like, it's not. I mean, we were all like tight end 1, definitely 2, 3, this year, and unfortunately, right now he's like tight end 20. But I'm still holding on to weeks of 12 points, 13 points, 22-point week. Maybe the JMO experiments fizzled a little bit as the guys went off the reservation. I'm sure he'll still have some splash weeks in the future. But I think I think this tight end landscape will kind of level out, and he's still a young tight end with a lot of potential. That, again, I want Laporta, I want Kincaid. If I can't have Bowers on my roster, I'm just going to let him ride, and I'm going to be happy with it. And then, Jacoby Myers in a deep league like that, where you got to start so many guys, he's maybe someday he'll get a quarterback, and you got something there. And then what else? You got a second round pick with that as well, even though you got to wait for it. I don't know.
You're moving the 26th second.
That's right. Well, I'm taking the Laporta side, which that's right. A second's included with the first. So there's a lot of draft capital with that side. But if you look at what we were given for Laporta in the offseason, I'm going to hold with Mitch. Give me Laporta.
The 0.25 premium just isn't enough for me, and in this format, I'll stand alone here.
Oh, wait, so 0.10. I just noticed that's the 0.25 premium. That's not a full 2-0. I should read all the lines, shouldn't I?
Dude, this is why I want to get these notes put together. And Mitch responds to me yesterday. The games aren't even over, John.
You won my players at like noon yesterday.
No,
I'm sorry. I want to be prepared.
No, so the notes are good.
Follow my instructions for this show, so you just calm down over there.
See, the challenge for listeners is I'm actually reading John's notes. I do love John's notes, but the 0.25 tight end premium got like indented to the second line here so I just wasn't reading 2 lines down and on my notes. So I missed it. But yeah, with that if it's not full tight end premium, I'll take Waddle in the first and all that draft capital.
Good news is, guys, we are 1.5 players in, and we're 32 minutes in at this point. So we are true Dynasty Theory time here.
Don't worry.
Oh, I'm not worried.
All right, Mitch, Waddle and Keon Coleman and a 25 third for Cedric Tillman and Terry McLaurin. 12-team Superflex, start 9, half PPR.
Waddle's whatever to me. Keon Coleman is my holdup here. I think I love what he's shown the last 4 to 5 weeks. I know he only had 2 catches this past week. The previous 3 weeks, he looked really good. I love McLaurin, though, so I want to go with McLaurin's side, but Keon Coleman's the holdup. It doesn't even really have that much to do with Waddle, but I want Keon Coleman on my team.
Dan?
We're looking to contend right now. We're the theme of this show is trading off these potential guys that could help us contend and win. So with that, I think McLaurin could outscore Waddle and Keon for the next 2 seasons. And Tillman's kind of been untapped a little bit with some good quarterback play. So give me the McLaurin side.
All right,
good
Mitch,
quarterback play.
Mitch, Waddle and Whittington for Cup in a 25-second, 12-team Superflex, start 10 PPR.
Cup and 25-second, no hesitation there.
Dan?
Yeah, I'm with you. Even though I'm a little hesitant on Cup, I think he's as good as Waddle right now, and I'm going to be confident in our drafting ability, boys, what we could turn that second into.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm good with Cup there as well. Okay. So now a few high-value players that we might be looking to leverage that are on our rosters. And this first one, who wanted to talk about Brian Thomas? Was it Mitch?
That was me.
It had to be, because I'm not even sniffing moving him.
Yeah.
But this hits close to me because, like, again, I have a decent amount of Brian Thomas because pre and post NFL draft, I had him over like Xavier Worthy. Mm-hmm. And I know that was a big decision for people. So either I had the pick and I was able to take Thomas over Worthy, or I had a pick and Worthy was taken and Thomas was still sitting there for me. So I kind of lucked into that. But he's been productive. He dealt with the injury this week, but like he's just so highly coveted right now. he is going per fantasy calc. He's wide receiver 11, 26th overall in Superflex formats. But again, like that's why we're talking about guys like this, because you could probably really make, help your roster out from a contender perspective, and still get a really nice return. So Mitch, why did you want to talk about Brian Thomas necessarily?
Because I think the package you could get for him if you're on a contending team, and he's awesome, right? Like right now he's a top 10 wide receiver, fantasy points wise and dynasty rankings wise, as far as wide receivers go. He's looking really, really good, but it's the guys around him in the rankings. You can't really move off you can move off of Puka, but you don't have the market there. That's Brian Thomas. Same thing with AJ Brown. You can love Drake London. Brian Thomas's market is just so much bigger than what Drake London's is. And they're ranked right next to each other. So this isn't hey, get Brian Thomas off your roster because he's hit his peak. I think he could still grow from here. I just think his market is so big at this point that I think the trades you could get done for him are just a lot more than what you could get for some other players, right?
So I got to add too, sorry, JB, as animated as I was before, and it's Mitch that thought of him, but there's no way I'm sniffing trading Brian Thomas. When I saw these trades, I'm like, this is why we don't want to be that owner, because you never know what you could get. And I always give Mitch for being creative and thinking outside the box. And man, we've seen it happen time again. Hey, always be open to entertaining a trade. You never know what you'll get. And some good examples coming up.
This is the same inputs and parameters here, same date range in all league settings. Brian Thomas, 879 trades over the same time period. Drake London, 633. So you speak to that larger market, and Drake London, as silly as it sounds, like he doesn't have that new car smell anymore.
No,
but he's 23 years old. That's why I said, as silly as it sounds, there's still people that I'm not contending. I'm at the bottom of the standings. I would prefer going after Brian Thomas because he's a rookie and he's shown that maybe he has a higher ceiling at an earlier rate than Drake London did. But still, I agree. The market is there on Brian Thomas, obviously.
Exactly. How many rebuilders in Dynasty are going to be like, no, I don't want Brian Thomas on my team, and don't take these old players for him, right? Even if it's an AJ Brown in that trade, they're like, you know what? I could get Brian Thomas. We could work out a deal here.
And even, I'm trying to go out and acquire Drake London, so this isn't a knock on him whatsoever. No. But just the market itself, even contending teams are okay acquiring Brian Thomas.
Yes.
Because he's producing. So you get these young assets where they're producing. That's when the dynasty value is just through the roof. So let's get to some trades here. Dan, Brian Thomas for Jaden Reed and a 25 first, 12-team Superflex, start 10 PPR, and then an extra half points for tight ends. You're on mute, Dan.
Oh, dang it.
I get my forceful voice whenever somebody mutes themselves.
And I called Mitch a rookie for that to start the show. Dang it. All right. I'm going to go with, man, this is painful. If I'm a contending team, trading Thomas to boost me this year to get Reed in the first, or am I the contending team giving Reed in the first to get Thomas because I want to contend now? How's that working, JB?
See, isn't this a fun guy to talk about?
What's that first going to be?
You have Brian Thomas. You're moving him for Jaden Reed in the first. And you would think a rebuilding team is not willing to give it up their pick, right?
Yeah, maybe it's someone else's first.
But let's say mid to late, best case scenario, it's mid. But for context, Brian Thomas, he's at 15.5 points per game. Jaden Reed, he's at 14.6.
Yeah, these guys are right next to each other in the rankings, and being so close, both of them being so young. I did note here I took the Reed in the first side, but boy, that's really hard.
Mitch?
My love for Reed, it's Reed, but the first is just the hammer on top. Yeah.
All right. Dan, Brian Thomas in a 25-second for Jameis Winston, Derrick Henry, and a 25 first. 10-team Superflex, start 10, half PPR.
I'm assuming if I'm doing this and I'm going to move Thomas, I really need a running back to win now, and my receivers are deeper, and I'm getting that insurance policy with that 25 first next year to draft, hopefully the next Brian Thomas. So I'm going to take Henry in the first, and maybe I need Winston too because he's included in this trade for some bye-week quarterback depth or something like that. So give me the package, but again, it's going to be roster specific. I won't just do that on any roster.
Getting that first on top again, you're contending. Derrick Henry isn't just the RB1. I mean, he is fantasy overall one as far as like positional players, right? Like he's been amazing. And so you get him, then you get the first on top. So it's not even like, hey, I'm trading this young player for an old player, hoping to contend this year, and we'll just see how you're getting the first as well. And so I'm going for the package.
All right. Dan, Brian Thomas in a 25 first for Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill in a 25 second, 10-team Superflex, start 9 PPR.
This is one where I go the other way. I think Mitch noted on the previous two trades, you had that first round pick insurance policy where your roster is still staying young and you have a shot to draft the next Thomas and you're getting some pieces to win now. This goes in the bucket of trades that I'm not going to regret next year. And I think I could potentially regret this next year. And every year after that, as a 22-year-old Brian Thomas should just get better. Plus I'd be losing my first. So I'm sorry. I'm not getting stuck with 2 30-plus-year-old wide receivers. The second isn't helpful enough. I'll stay with Thomas in the first, even if it costs me winning my league this year.
Yeah, I'm completely out on this. I want Brian Thomas in the first.
And then Brian Thomas in a 25 second for A.J. Brown and Elijah Moore, 12-team Superflex, start 10 PPR. Dan?
I'm on the Thomas side again, and surprisingly, he's outscored A.J. Brown this year, so I don't know if you're necessarily improving there. I'm going to take the Brian Thomas
Can I throw the challenge flag?
I wanted to do it on mine, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Dan, nobody cares, especially me and Mitch, about total season points. You got to start looking at the averages per game, man.
Yeah, but
AJ Brown is averaging. AJ Brown's averaging 20 points per game. You are getting a weekly upgrade.
I get it, but he's another guy that's kind of made of glass, and I just think Brian Thomas has that potential to score with AJ Brown. And I'm not. And I got my anti-Eagle sentiment, I'm sure, which helps a little bit, but I'm sticking with Brian Thomas.
Mitch, my eyes kind of just went whenever I heard him say Brian Thomas has outscored A.J. Brown, because I know how Dan operates.
Yeah,
I know he's always looking at just total points. We'll get him there. Mitch, what side are you on here?
So for me, I'm going with AJ Brown, but I would try to get a piece different than Elijah Moore if I'm going to add that second on top, because I think it's a pretty straight up trade. You're going to trade the younger wide receiver for the older one who's going to produce a little bit more, but they're both right next to each other, like literally right next to each other in any rankings you look at. So you're going to get more points, but you're gaining an age for that. So if I'm adding a second on top, got to get something better than Elijah Moore.
What if it was like Jacoby or Cortland Sutton?
Jacoby, yes. Cortland Sutton, yes. Deontay Johnson, no.
Yeah. Cortland Sutton gets a little more enticing for me. Jacoby, I don't know, not this year with that Raiders situation, but like AJ Brown, I mean, we have seen this from him. I mean, when he's on, and he could be a league winner. So I definitely get that side of it. But he's also had weeks that, again, missed 3 weeks, dudded this week after he got hurt. Sometimes Hurts has his struggles. I mean, Brian Thomas has shown a 23-point week, a 22-point week, a 15-point week. Unfortunately, the Jacksonville coaching staff's like, just don't get me started on that dysfunction there, because I'm staying loyal to Trevor Lawrence, hoping he's going to have a new coach next year.
All right. I'm going to bucket these next two together. Jordan Love and CJ Stroud. All right. For me, I only brought one player, which is a shock, but it was CJ Stroud. And again, asterisk, disclaimer, exclamation point, like bold, italics. I'm not advocating for just dumping CJ Stroud, but he is quarterback 22 on a per game basis this year when in +4 -1. And I know, obviously, and Mitch, we've talked about this so many times, when a quarterback loses their stud receiver, and that is Nico Collins, there's going to be a negative impact. And then he loses Stephon Diggs. So he's left with Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz, who's just kind of a body at this point. Like, I understand the additional context there, but because the market on CJ Stroud is so robust, then you have people that they're not really willing to pay the price on these upper echelon quarterbacks, and they're okay with what they have. So I definitely get that pushback. But for both these guys, Mitch, you had Jordan Love, I had CJ Stroud. I have them back to back in my tiers at 7 and 8. Like, there's a market, there's an opportunity, and I mean, I was kind of surprised you wanted to talk about Jordan Love because he's been pretty solid. I think he was a little dinged up there against your Lions, but maybe that's just some bias. I don't know.
No, so the biggest reason why is, and I love that you brought up CJ Stroud because that was my comparison for Jordan Love. We talked about in the offseason, and everybody who did a fantasy podcast this offseason talked about, to where for CJ Stroud to hit on where he was being drafted, he needed to be the most outlier of outliers. He needed to have like a 9% touchdown rate, right? Like, it just need to be absurdly high because he doesn't rush. And guess who else doesn't rush? Jordan Love. Jordan Love has less than 15 rush attempts this season. And when you look at guys like, we have Caleb, who's in this year, can rush. Daniels is an elite rusher, right? Bo Nix, great rushing. Drake May, great rushing. For guys like, Jordan Love's been good because he's had the 3 and 4 touchdown games until he doesn't. Those 3 and 4 touchdown games is just not going to continue. He could have a year to where it's great, and then he's going to have a down year, and then he's going to have a good year, and then he's going to have a down year. Just their floor is just not great. So while I love both these players, I'm okay moving off these kind of quarterbacks for like a lesser quarterback in a positional piece. Because while I love these guys and I love them in DFS, I love betting on them in my prop picks, I'm okay with not having them on my dynasty teams.
All right. So let's start with Dan on these. Jordan Love, Jamison Williams, Isaiah Pacheco for CD Lamb and Geno Smith, 12-team Superflex start 9 PPR.
In this one, like, now, even though I do think Jordan Love's going to be just fine, I think he's definitely, his bye week couldn't come at a better time. Like, if there's anyone in the National Football League that needed a week to give his body a rest, it's Jordan Love. But to turn down a CD Lamb, you didn't say anymore. I'm as a homer as it gets. But if Geno could just give me, enough years and stay stable, and my team really needs a Lamb, I'm going to take the Lamb side.
Yeah, I love Lamb and Geno here.
All right. Jordan Love and JJ McCarthy for Joe Burrow and Mike Gesicki, 12-team Superflex start 9 half PPR, extra half point for tight ends. Dan?
Yeah, this is an easy Jordan Love and McCarthy one for me. Gesicki's a cool little DraftKings story the last couple of weeks, and maybe Dynasty stash or something to help you. But outside of that, forget about it. I like Love almost as much as Burrow, so 2 for 1. That's a steal.
Yeah, seeing how good Darnold's done in this offense, I'm so excited to see what McCarthy does next year with them. I'm going McCarthy.
Yeah, I think the first 2 trades there, it really shows you the dynamic and the way people might be looking at Jordan Love. Like Jordan Love's still a top 6 quarterback right now, but like I understand where Mitch's point is, where if you're not getting the 3 or 4 touchdowns, well, he's not going to have that floor that a lot of these other quarterbacks are going to have, and you can supplement that. And that first trade, you're adding a cornerstone in CD Lamb. it's not like you're doing Geno Smith, Mike Evans, and
Xavier Worthy.
Xavier Worthy. Yeah, that's a good one. Like, you're adding a premier piece here. So I understand that. And then for this one, we 3 peas in a pod, guys, because like it's almost a free JJ McCarthy.
It is. Yeah.
Like that. And I have Joe Burrow just 1 tier above Jordan Love, but the Gesicki JJ McCarthy, that doesn't close the gap at all. All right. Love and Amari Cooper for Amon-Ra St. Brown in a 25-second 10-team super flex start 9 PPR.
Yeah, well, where this trade flips compared to the Lamb one is, I'd love to get Sun God, but I've got no quarterback insurance policy, quarterback anything coming back to me. So unless I'm like loaded at quarterback and I could do this, I got to stick with the Love side.
With it being 10-team, I'm assuming that I'm going to be able to have some quarterbacks on my bench. So I'm going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown in this one.
That's what flips it for me as well, Mitch. All right, and then we got Jordan Love, Kenneth Walker, and a highly valued 25 third for Justin Herbert and Breece Hall, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR. Dan?
I'm gonna backtrack with that 10-team though, but I would also think my receivers are gonna be deeper too.
Not deeper than Amon-Ra St. Brown.
But with it being a start 9, we don't want the depth. We want those cornerstone pieces at the positional players.
But Jordan Love's a cornerstone piece as long as he's healthy. I mean, he could be lighting it up. Like, I was just looking at my quarterback rankings tonight, and like, boy, it gets really scary as you go down them. I just don't want to get stuck with guys that aren't going to not have jobs next year. So just a little side point, man. There's a lot of fragility at the quarterback spot.
Getting in the Christmas mood here certainly is fragile, but I'm taking Amon-Ra St. Brown still.
That's
love
fair.
you, Dan.
That's fair.
Love you, Dan, but you're wrong. That's what you get for making us wait 2 minutes and having your technical issues again. Okay,
fine. So this next one, John.
Love Kenneth Walker in the third for Justin Herbert and Breece Hall, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
I love all these guys.
Yeah,
but I will take the Herbert and Breece side. It just feels like it's got more momentum to it. I like the direction the Chargers are going in, and I just like Breece a bit more than Walker, but it's very close. Very, very close.
You know, I said on the show 3 or 4 weeks ago that Herbert's price point at that point was the lowest it would ever be in Dynasty because it's already moving up. And like, I love Kenneth Walker. His market isn't like we've talked about on this episode with different players. His market is not the same as Breece Hall. They can score the same fantasy points every single week. It doesn't matter. Breece Hall is worth more in Dynasty than Kenneth Walker is. So I'm going with Herbert and Breece.
I almost think it's a pick your poison, but like it's like a good poison in these situations. Like Dan said, I don't think you can go wrong, but I do prefer the Herbert side. And Mitch, I remember specifically when you said it, because we were talking about startup values and you said, okay, maybe he's going beginning of the third. He's never going to slip to like beginning of the fourth. Yeah. And well, look at what he's done the last 3 weeks. He's put together a couple really strong games despite having those weapons. All right. So CJ Stroud, Mitch, let's start with you on these.
Mm-hmm.
Stroud in a 27 first for Jaden Daniels. How quickly the tide is turning and people just jump ship. 12-team Superflex start 10.
Yeah, there's not a quarterback in the league I'm adding a first on top of CJ Stroud to go and get. So it's CJ Stroud for me.
I would do it for Josh Allen.
Okay. All right. You might win. Okay. You're right. Josh Allen. No other one.
Lamar Jackson?
I don't think I would, to be honest. That would be close, but adding a first is so much of a premium on top of CJ Stroud. I just don't want to do it.
Dan?
I'm on the Jaden Daniels side. I'm willing to roll that dice and enjoy this long career. I mean, I have Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jaden Daniels that I just think are like
Stroud isn't going to have a long
out of the league in 5 years.
I know, but I mean, like these pocket passers kind of get a little like hit and miss, where these rushing guys are just, man, they're just always up at the top of it. It's just, I just love the rushing guys that could also throw. And so I'm going to go with Daniels. 27 first. It's a long time away, man. Give me Daniels.
Yeah, and Daniels is 10 months older than Stroud.
But he could run.
He could run. Those beautiful legs of Jaden Daniels. Stroud, Rattler, and a 25 third for Jalen Hurts.
Stroud. I would probably like Hurts more if I like the coaching staff more. I just don't like that coaching staff at all. I mean, I like the rest of the playmakers on it, but I just hate that coaching staff so much. I'm going with Stroud.
I hate their head coach. I'm not a big fan of their offensive coordinator, but I really hate their head coach, the Eagles. But despite that, he is still producing, and he can run. And those tush pushes are like just weekly. I mean, taken away from Saquon Barkley. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts here.
Something
seems off in Houston, guys.
Game.
I hope it's just a Nico Collins thing, but like, I don't know. They're a little figured out this year, Houston. Still love them, but I like Hurts.
Dan, listen, you're a married man over there. These last two quarterbacks, you're talking about their legs. You're talking about their tush. What are we doing here, guys?
I get strong feelings when I don't have to be stuck with like, Tua, Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Derek Carr, Daniel Jones. I get passionate.
I just knocked little Josh Allen over from laughing and put my head back. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Hopefully that's not an omen. That's
just as long as you didn't knock Troy over, you're all right.
No, Troy's up there, and somehow Juju's still standing too. Stroud, excuse me.
Choked up over Juju.
Stroud for Burrow, Adonai Mitchell, and Elijah Moore.
I'm taking the package with Burrow, but I hate the package with Burrow. I'd want to choose like any other wide receivers if I could, but you add a plus on Burrow, I'll take that.
Yeah, same, man. Like Burrow and Stroud are so close. I mean, AD Mitchell, he flashed this last game. I know we need to see more, and I know there's quarterback concerns there, but I think the talent's still there. So give me those little bonus pieces.
All right. Stroud, Keon Coleman, and a 25 first for Trevor Lawrence and Jamar Chase. 10-team Superflex, start 9 PPR.
You are testing me with this because of how much I hate Trevor Lawrence.
I know.
But I don't hate Trevor Lawrence that much to not get Jamar Chase on my teams.
Yeah, man, this is like the Lamb one, Gemstone and Chase there. And man, I am firmly believing that if Trevor Lawrence could ever get a coach that would put him in good positions, like I have never felt more bad for a quarterback than Josh Allen's Funko Pop behind JB and Trevor Lawrence with the coaches he's had. Both of those tough situations.
Mitch, I wasn't going to be able to do the rest of the show.
Oh, I know.
It's 3 more minutes knowing that my Josh Allen was face planted back there like he had a long weekend down south side here in Pittsburgh. Let's see. All right. And then Stroud for Goff and DK. 10-team again, 10-team Superflex, start 12 PPR.
Stroud.
I'll go Goff and DK.
That one's Stroud for me, but I mean, it's close.
Start 12.
Mitch, let me ask you, if we change DK to...
Calls himself a Lions fan. Come on.
What about Garrett Wilson?
Yes, I would switch that.
Okay, so like from a market perspective, we're not that far.
We're not that far off, but yeah, I love DK on my teams, but as far as trading for him, it's just not something I'm looking to do.
All right, and then Dan, I didn't forget your guy here, and this is the time to possibly move him because it's a youngish player. You can move him for a vet that is even further producing. If there's a team at the bottom of the standings that might have interest in him, he just scored a touchdown in a primetime game, but Jordan Addison.
Yeah, man. He's in that classification with like Ayuk and Rashee Rice for me that are like talented dudes that have some value, but they've got a lot of baggage. I just see him with his baggage as always being a wide receiver 2 at best. And I look for a little more consistency and stable pieces of my roster. So I'd be looking to move him.
All right, Dan, let's start with you actually on these. Let's go rapid fire here. Jordan Addison and a 25 second for Tony Pollard and Jake Ferguson. 12-team Superflex, start 12, no PPR, but 0.75 PPR for tight ends.
That's enough of a premium. Pollard and my boy Fergs, there'll be better days.
Agreed.
Addison and Kincaid for DK Metcalf. 12-team Superflex, start 11, PPR, no tight end premium.
I put a note this will be a little bit roster specific for me because I don't want to get stuck with like Dawson Knox, but I'll go DK here with no tight end premium.
I'm going Addison Kincaid.
Addison for Mike Evans.
Evans 32 next summer. As much as I love him, I need something else here, so I'll stay with Addison in the youth.
Yeah, I agree.
Try to get more.
I would go Mike Evans there, just for the record. Addison in a 25 first for Tyreek Hill. 10-team Superflex, start 10 PPR.
Hill 31 next March. I'll take the first with Addison.
Yeah, I was saying, I think it was on the Start Sit show that I would take any first for Tyreek at this point, pretty much, and that's how it'd be on this one too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be willing to add, especially in the 10-team format. I know you obviously get the premium pieces a little bit elevated, but also your first is locked in as a top 10 pick. So final one, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson in a 25 second for Josh Jacobs. 10-team Superflex, start 10 PPR.
I'm willing to roll the dice and move that young package there and take Josh Jacobs. He's having a really good year, and he's not that old. So give me Josh.
Josh looks really good. I mean, the last 3 weeks, he's looked awesome. I'm going Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, and again, like we always talk about what you're possibly giving up. Like with Brian Thomas, we see that ceiling. We see that explosiveness. And even though we had the high touchdown upside last year with Jordan Addison, like just overall, I don't know if the ceiling is there. Like when we're talking about a player like Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, I think we've all seen enough. So the value, like it's on that package side. But I think the move here is to go for Josh Jacobs. So it's an interesting one, especially one that fits contender versus rebuild. But guys, I knew we'd make it here, just a couple minutes over. But you know, we worked our magic. Yes, Dalton Kincaid took up a lot of our time, as the first player typically does. And you know me, I like to ramble a little bit. But Dan, for the 267th time, I can't believe we're getting ever so close to episode 300 of Dynasty Theory. But final thoughts, what do you got for our listeners?
Two quick ones, man. I might have been peeking a little bit at the Monday Night Football game as we record. Cade Otton, biggest riser this year. He is just a dude, man. Like statistically, and I watched him a couple of weeks ago. He is tough as nails, man. Like he takes hits, it doesn't matter. So love Cade Otton. But then just a couple things to note going into Week 10. The NFL trade deadline is on Election Day. All right, Tuesday, tomorrow. So let's watch that really closely. See if anyone else gets moved that impacts fantasy. I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the Discord. Safe Leagues trade deadlines Week 12. It's approaching closer, so really be active in your leagues there. And then Sunday morning we got another NFL game. It's Giants Panthers, bless us all. But be ready for that Sunday early game, and then 4 teams on a bye: Cleveland, Green Bay, Vegas, and Seattle. So prepare accordingly here for Week 10.
Yeah, bust out the Wiener Schnitzel, right? Aren't they over in Germany this week?
Yeah.
You're so you know. Get ready there. I have a quick final thought, Mitch.
Go ahead.
I was not the 20 guys in the show notes.
Wait, I put it really low so you guys wouldn't see them.
I pay attention, John. I scrolled.
So these just quick.
Lord.
If I'm contending, these are the trade targets I'm looking on at the bottom of the standings on rosters that aren't contending based on expected production, price, and their schedule. So rest of season and playoff. Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Brian Robinson, health pending, Rashad White, Bucky, health pending, Rico Dowdle, Mitch, great call on the start sit show, Adams, Mooney, Myers, Ridley, Sutton, Otten. Those are the guys that I'm looking to poach from these teams at the bottom of the standings. See, That didn't take that long. Mitch, final thoughts. What do you got for our listeners?
Hey, with how much we're talking about contending and rebuilding, I just want to say for anyone who's hesitant on knowing, you could go on Dynasty Daddy. There is a power ranking on there you could use. If you don't want to go on there, hit up if you play in my fantasy league, look at the all play percentage. If you're over 60%, you could feel pretty good. If you're down at 40%, you're really not competing on a weekly basis, even if you have a good record. And then max points for on Sleeper is about the only good way. So I definitely recommend that if you play on Sleeper, go to Dynasty Daddy, use the power rank tool, just so you have an idea on if your team is actually good or if it just kind of has a good record and is going to fall on its face in the playoffs.
I have one team. It's like 5-3, and the all play percentage is like 350.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm making a push. And I'm like, am I? I don't think so. So yes, that's a very good point there, Mitch. Maybe your team is, I don't even want to say producing, but you've gotten lucky from a schedule perspective. Mm-hmm. Don't push all those chips in because your team, speaking of fragility, that team could be super fragile. Hopefully you all enjoyed this week's episode. Go over there, check out ddfantasyfootball.com, code theory, first month, half off. Come check it out. Like I said, a lot of great stuff there on the website. And then within the Discord, there's 8 bonus episodes every single week that are only for the DD Fantasy Football community. Make sure you hit the like button on this video. It helps us out, and we greatly appreciate it. And drop a comment. Let us know where these guys messed up on their trade takes, because I know I didn't have any issues tonight. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. We'll catch everybody next week.